At the height of the Cold War, when every nation was racing to push aircraft faster and higher, the U.S. Navy did something nobody expected. They deliberately went in the opposite direction. While rivals were designing sleek supersonic fighters, the Navy unveiled a short, stocky, almost comical-looking jet. Pilots took one look at it and started calling it the SLU, short for short, little, ugly. Fill in the blank yourself. But here's the twist. That so-called embarrassment didn't just survive the ridicule, it dominated the battlefield. Over the skies of Vietnam, it flew farther, hit harder, and proved more durable than many of the cutting-edge jets that carried a price tag 10 times higher. So how did a plane written off as a design failure manage to become one of the most feared strike aircraft in modern military history? This is the story of the A-7 Corsair II, the jet that proved going slower can actually win the war. The 1950s and 60s were the golden age of aviation ambition. Every new aircraft seemed locked onto one singular goal: break the sound barrier, then shatter it again. The U.S. Air Force was rolling out record-setting designs while the Navy placed its bets on high-speed interceptors built to climb fast, strike fast, and vanish even faster. To the outside world, it looked like the future of air combat belonged entirely to supersonic machines. Aircraft like the F-8 Crusader and the F-4 Phantom II were extraordinary feats of engineering, thundering through the sky at twice the speed of sound, loud, glamorous, and breathtakingly expensive. But beneath all that shine, a serious problem was quietly building. These jets had become so complex and costly that they were practically disposable. By the time one design entered active service, a newer and faster replacement was already being sketched out. It was a cycle that drained billions of dollars and left pilots flying revolutionary-looking machines that simply weren't designed for the brutal low-altitude combat waiting for them in the jungles of Vietnam. That's when a hard truth began to sink in at the Navy's highest levels. Speed wasn't everything. When you're hugging the treetops, weaving through enemy fire, and trying to place bombs on a precise target, supersonic capability doesn't just stop being useful, it becomes a liability. The stage was set for a fundamental rethinking of what a combat aircraft should actually be. By the mid-1960s, the Vietnam War was exposing every flaw in the Navy's existing playbook. The A-4 Skyhawk had served faithfully, but it was showing its limits. Its modest payload and relatively short range meant pilots often had to fly multiple dangerous sorties just to deliver enough firepower for a single mission objective. In a war where targets were often hundreds of miles away and anti-aircraft fire was relentless, that wasn't a sustainable strategy. Commanders issued a demanding wish list: a strike aircraft that could carry double the weapons, fly double the distance, and still be economical enough to field in large numbers. On paper, it sounded almost contradictory. Most manufacturers were chasing performance metrics: speed, altitude, cutting-edge electronics, non-endurance, and raw survivability. But the Navy's requirements couldn't have been clearer. They needed a plane that could stay airborne longer than anything currently flying, a plane that could absorb punishment and still complete its mission. And above all, a plane simple and tough enough to endure the unforgiving demands of real combat. That's when Vought Aircraft, the same company behind the supersonic F-8 Crusader, came forward with an unconventional proposal. Rather than designing something entirely new, they would adapt the proven Crusader airframe into something fundamentally different: a compact, subsonic strike platform engineered not for speed, but for endurance. At first glance, it seemed like a step backward. But as the war in Vietnam escalated, it became increasingly obvious that what pilots actually needed wasn't another high-performance showpiece. They needed a workhorse that could get the job done and bring them home. When Vought unveiled the new design, the reaction from pilots was less than enthusiastic. The aircraft looked almost deliberately ungainly: a broad nose intake, a stubby fuselage, short-cropped wings. It was the visual opposite of everything the jet age had come to represent. The nickname SLU spread fast, and it wasn't meant as a term of endearment, but tucked inside that unremarkable frame was a strike aircraft unlike anything the Navy had seen before. Rather than burning fuel in pursuit of speed, the A-7 Corsair II was engineered for staying power. It boasted 4 times the combat range of the Skyhawk. It could carry up to 20,000 pounds of ordnance, more than many of the heavy bombers that had fought in World War II. And it could accomplish all of this while costing significantly less to build and maintain than the glamour jets of the era. The shift in thinking was genuinely radical. For the first time, the Navy was saying out loud, "Forget speed records. Give us accuracy. Give us payload. Give us a jet we can count on." And that's precisely what the Corsair A-2 delivered. The irony was almost poetic. In an era intoxicated by futuristic supersonic design, the Navy's most effective strike aircraft turned out to be slow, stubby, and visually uninspiring. Once its true capabilities became clear, however, nobody was laughing anymore. Looks aside, the A-7 was quietly ahead of its time in almost every meaningful way. To begin with, it was the first American combat jet powered by a turbofan engine rather than a conventional turbojet. That distinction mattered enormously. Turbofans are significantly more fuel efficient, which translated directly into greater range and longer time on station. Suddenly, this slow jet could reach deeper into enemy territory than many of its faster counterparts. Then there was the cockpit. The Corsair II became the first U.S. military aircraft equipped with a modern heads-up display, projecting essential flight data: altitude, dive angle, targeting information directly into the pilot's line of sight. By today's standards, that may sound routine. In the 1960s, it was transformative. Pilots no longer had to break their focus to scan instrument panels while maneuvering through hostile airspace. The real revolution, though, was in the weapons system. The A-7 incorporated an advanced IBM navigation and bombing computer that enabled a degree of precision that few aircraft of the era could come close to matching. Gone were the days of carpet bombing and hoping something landed close enough to matter. The Corsair II could put ordnance exactly where it was needed. It also introduced the Wally, a television-guided glide bomb that pilots at the time called the smart bomb. The pilot would lock a small cockpit video screen onto the target, release the weapon, and then immediately break away while the bomb autonomously guided itself to impact. This was precision strike capability that predated GPS-guided munitions by decades. On top of all that, the A-7 was armored, equipped with triple redundant hydraulic systems, and carried Sidewinder missiles for self-defense. It was rugged, precise, and built to survive conditions that would have grounded lesser aircraft. So while it looked like an awkward relic, the Corsair II was in reality a quietly revolutionary weapons platform, and its first taste of combat would make that very hard to ignore. In May of 1970, the A-7 Corsair II entered the fight over Vietnam and wasted no time proving its worth. Its assignments weren't the glamorous stuff of aerial combat films. There were no high-speed dogfights or dramatic supersonic intercepts. Instead, the Corsair II owned the unglamorous but critical work that actually shaped the outcome of the war. Low-altitude strike runs, threading through enemy fire just above the canopy, dropping precision ordnance on fortified positions with methodical consistency. During Operation Linebacker in the 1972 mining campaign against North Vietnamese ports, the A-7 became the backbone of Navy strike operations. Pilots quickly discovered it was a genuinely pleasurable aircraft to fly: stable, predictable, and forgiving even during the notoriously demanding task of landing on a carrier deck. Veteran pilot David "Frosty" Olson put it directly: as an attack platform, it was rock solid and handled beautifully. It wasn't built to win dogfights, and without an afterburner, it never would. But that was never the point. It was built to put weapons on target, and at that job, nothing else came close. Unlike so many experimental designs of the era that promised the world and under-delivered in the field, the A-7 did exactly what it said on the label. It stayed airborne for hours, hauled an enormous weapons load, and delivered it with accuracy that bordered on the unprecedented. The Navy had asked for twice the range and twice the firepower of the Skyhawk. The Corsair II gave them both, and then exceeded expectations. By the time the Vietnam War wound down, the A-7 Corsair II's record was impossible to argue with. It had flown over 97,000 combat sorties, delivering more ordnance with greater accuracy than virtually any other Navy aircraft of the conflict. And here's what made those numbers truly remarkable. Of the hundreds of Corsairs committed to combat, only 54 were lost. For an aircraft designed to fly low and slow, exactly the profile that makes a jet a prime target for ground-based anti-aircraft fire, that survival rate was nothing short of extraordinary.